The service station thermometer read -12 when I pulled in for my break. 3 weeks into the worst winter Norfolk had seen in decades, and I'd been driving the gritting lorry for 14 hours straight. I'm writing this from my sister's flat in London now. Haven't been back to Norfolk since that February night. The council keeps calling about the abandoned lorry, but I can't explain what happened without sounding completely mad. The A47 service area sat empty, except for a white van parked by the pumps. Snow had been falling steadily since noon, and the forecast promised another 8 inches before dawn. Perfect conditions for black ice, which meant I'd be out all night spreading salt on the rural routes. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed that particular frequency that makes your teeth ache. The night clerk, a kid maybe 19, barely glanced up from his phone. I grabbed a coffee and a sandwich, noticing the security monitor behind the counter showed static on half the screens. "Cameras are knackered," the kid said, following my gaze. "Snow's interfering with the signal." I paid and headed back out. That's when I noticed the white van had moved. Now it sat directly behind my gritting lorry, blocking me in. No lights on, engine off. The snow muffled everything, creating that peculiar silence you only get during heavy snowfall. I walked closer, boots crunching on fresh powder. The van's windows were fogged from inside. "Excuse me?" I knocked on the driver's window. "Need you to move." Nothing. I knocked harder. The fog on the window shifted slightly, like someone had breathed against it from inside. Then I saw him. The maintenance contractor from my depot, Gary something. He'd been sacked 6 weeks ago for stealing diesel. He smiled at me through the glass. Just smiled. I backed away, fumbling for my phone. No signal. The storm must have knocked out the local tower. When I looked back, Gary was getting out of the van, still wearing his old high-vis jacket with the council logo. "Been waiting for you, mate," he said. His breath clouded in the cold air. "Know your route. Know you always stop here." I moved toward the station building, but he stepped sideways, cutting me off. In his hand was a wheel brace. "You gave that statement, didn't you, about the missing fuel?" "Gary, this is... It cost me everything, my job, my pension, 23 years gone." The wind picked up, driving snow horizontally across the forecourt. The station's lights flickered. Through the window, I could see the clerk had earbuds in, oblivious. I ran. Not toward the building. Gary blocked that path. I sprinted into the lorry park behind the station, where articulated trucks sat like sleeping giants. The snow was knee-deep between the vehicles, slowing me down. I could hear Gary behind me, his breathing harsh in the cold. I squeezed between 2 refrigerated trailers, the metal so cold it burned through my gloves. My gritting lorry's keys dug into my thigh as I crouched. Gary's footsteps crunched past, then stopped. "Council's got trackers on those lorries," he called out, "but they don't check them during storms. No one will know where you are until morning shift. Maybe not even then." He was right. During weather emergencies, everyone focused on keeping the roads clear. A missing driver wouldn't be noticed for hours. I crawled under a trailer, snow soaking through my coveralls. The undercarriage was caked with road salt and ice. I could see Gary's boots moving between the trucks, methodical and patient. My hands were going numb. The cold made thinking difficult. I needed to get back inside the station, but Gary kept positioning himself between me and the building. Then I remembered the panic button on my lorry keys. It would set off the alarm, might alert the clerk. I pressed it. Nothing. Too far away, or the battery was dying in the cold. Gary found me 15 minutes later, hypothermic and barely able to move. But he didn't use the wheel brace. Instead, he dragged me to his van. "Not gonna hurt you," he said, zip-tying my wrists. Just want you to understand what it's like. Losing everything. He drove us out onto the B146, a narrow road I'd been scheduled to grit. The snow made it nearly impassable. About 3 miles out, he stopped. Your lorry's back there. Keys are in it. By the time you walk back, I'll be gone. But you'll be finished. Abandoning your vehicle during an emergency call-out, you'll be sacked, just like I was. He cut the ties and pushed me out into the blizzard. The walk back took 2 hours. I nearly didn't make it. My core temperature dropped so low, the hospital said I was lucky to survive. But Gary was wrong about one thing. The station clerk had seen everything on the one working camera. The police found Gary at his ex-wife's house in Lincolnshire. They charged him with false imprisonment and assault. He got 18 months, served 9. I quit the council job. Couldn't face those long, dark drives anymore. Moved south, work in an office now. But every time it snows, every time I see a white van in my mirror, I check my locks twice. The worst part? Last week I got a Christmas card. No message, just a photo of that service station. The postmark was from Norwich. Gary's out, and winter's coming again. The smell hit me first. Diesel exhaust mixed with something chemical, like antifreeze pooling on frozen asphalt. My breath fogged the window of the rural petrol station where I'd stopped during the worst cold snap we'd had in years. I'm writing this down now because the police said they need everything I remember, every detail, before the trail goes completely cold. The irony isn't lost on me. Everything about that night was already frozen solid. It was past 11 when I pulled into the station, 20 miles from the nearest town. The temperature display on the forecourt read -12. Ice warnings had been in effect for 3 days, and the roads were treacherous sheets of black ice, hidden under a dusting of snow. I'd been driving back from a work conference in Leeds, taking the back roads to avoid the gridlocked motorway where a lorry had jackknifed earlier. The station was one of those old independent ones, not a chain. Single attendant on night shift, probably making minimum wage, to sit in a bulletproof box and press buttons to activate the pumps. I remember thinking how lonely it must be watching headlights sweep past on the A road all night. I filled up and careful not to slip on the icy forecourt. That's when I noticed the other car. A dark estate, parked behind the building where the car wash bays were shuttered for winter. Engine running, exhaust plume visible in the freezing air. Strange place to idle, I thought. But maybe someone was checking their phone for directions. Inside the shop, the attendant, young guy, maybe 22, was restocking cigarettes behind the counter. His hands were shaking slightly. At first I attributed it to the cold. The heating in these places is always inadequate. But when I handed over my card, he leaned forward slightly. Don't look. But there's someone in that car who's been here 2 hours, he whispered. Won't leave, won't come in, just watching. My card reader beeped, declined. The machine was having issues with the cold, he explained louder than necessary. Could I try again? As I fumbled with my wallet, he slipped me a receipt with something scrawled on the back. Help. Can't call police. He'll know. The hairs on my neck stood up. Through the window's reflection, I could make out the estate car's silhouette. The driver's door was opening. Machine's properly frozen, the attendant said loudly. Mind trying the ATM outside? Sometimes works better. I understood. He wanted me outside, away from whatever was about to happen, but I couldn't just leave him. Actually, I'll try another card first, I said, buying time. The shop door's electronic chime sounded. A man entered, tall, wearing a heavy coat and wool hat pulled low. He moved with deliberate slowness, boots squeaking on the wet floor where snow had melted. He didn't look at me, just walked straight to the counter. "Shift change soon, innit?" His accent was local but forced, like someone trying to sound more working class than they were. The attendant's jaw tightened. "Not till 6. "Sure about that? Thought your replacement was coming early on account of the weather." "No." The man leaned on the counter. "See, I heard different. Heard young Bradley was coming in at midnight. Your cousin, right? Lives on Marsh Lane?" The way he said it, specific details almost taunting, made my blood run cold. This wasn't random. He knew exactly who would be coming and when. The attendant's face had gone pale. Maybe you should call him. Tell him not to bother. Roads are dangerous tonight." I pretended to search my pockets for another card, mind racing. The panic button would be under the counter, but the attendant couldn't reach it without being obvious. The man's hand was in his coat pocket, gripping something. "Found it," I announced, producing my backup card. "Hope this one works." The man finally looked at me. His eyes were flat, calculating. "Station's closing early tonight. Weather." "Sign says 24 hours, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Signs can be wrong." The attendant's phone buzzed on the counter. We all looked at it. The screen showed a message preview. 5 minutes out, Bradley." The man smiled. "Better tell him to turn around." That's when I realized what this was. Not a robbery, something personal. The attendant had seen something, knew something, and this man was here to ensure silence before the shift change provided a witness. "I really need petrol," I said. "My card—" "Leave." The man's voice dropped all pretense of friendliness. "But—" He pulled his hand partially from his pocket. I glimpsed metal. "The lady needs petrol," the attendant said suddenly. "Pump 3's still on. I'll activate it." He pressed something under the counter, not the panic button, but the pump override. Then he grabbed the shop phone. "I'll call Bradley now. Tell him not to come." The man nodded, satisfied. But the attendant wasn't calling his cousin. He'd activated the external speaker system, the one that usually played advertisements at the pumps. "Bradley? Yeah, it's me. Don't come tonight." His voice echoed across the frozen forecourt. "There's a situation here. Black estate car, registration starts with L man in a dark coat. I'm calling the police after this." The man lunged across the counter, but the attendant had already dropped the phone and hit the real panic button. Silent alarm straight to the police. "Pumps are recording," the attendant said quickly. "CCTV uploads to cloud every 30 seconds, has been for 2 hours. The man's face contorted with rage, but we could already hear sirens. There must have been a patrol car nearby, probably dealing with weather-related accidents. He ran, slipped on the ice outside, scrambled up, made it to his car. The estate fishtailed wildly as he floored it onto the main road. I memorized the full registration as the tail lights disappeared. The police arrived 3 minutes later. Turns out the attendant had witnessed a hit and run 2 weeks prior. Same car, same driver. The man had tracked him down, learned his schedule, waited for the perfect isolated moment during the cold snap, when response times would be slow. They caught him 15 miles away, when his car slid into a barrier on black ice. Poetic justice, perhaps. Bradley arrived just as I was giving my statement, confused but safe. The attendant, his name was Marcus, was shaking from more than cold by then. Before I left, he thanked me for not driving away. "Most people would have," he said. "Maybe. But I keep thinking about what would have happened if I'd taken the motorway instead, if I'd stopped at a different station, if my card hadn't been declined by a frozen machine." The police need this written statement by tomorrow. They say my testimony is crucial. I'm the only independent witness. They've put me in touch with victim support, given me a panic button of my own. Just precautionary, they say. But I know the man had accomplices. Marcus had recognized another car driving past repeatedly while we waited for police. And last night, a dark van idled outside my flat for an hour. The cold snap is supposed to last another week. I've started taking different routes to work, varying my schedule. I check my mirrors constantly. This morning, there was ice on my windscreen, formed in an unusual pattern, like someone had sprayed water on it during the night. The water had frozen in the shape of letters. You should have left. The ice crystals on the ferry terminal windows caught the late afternoon sun like 1,000 tiny mirrors. That's what I noticed first, before everything went wrong. I'd taken the ferry across the Sound dozens of times during winter breaks, but never during a severe cold snap warning. The terminal was nearly empty. Most sensible people had stayed home after the Transport Authority issued advisories about potential delays. My shift at the mainland hospital wouldn't wait, though. Night shifts in the ER meant crossing regardless of weather. The waiting area had that particular stillness that comes with extreme cold. Even sounds seemed frozen. Footsteps too sharp. Voices carrying too far across the polished floors. Maybe 15 other passengers scattered across the rows of blue plastic seats. The departure board showed our ferry delayed by 40 minutes. Ice on the loading ramp, apparently. I found a spot near the observation windows, overlooking the vehicle deck below. Watched the dock workers in their reflective gear struggling with the frozen moorings. That's when I noticed him first. The maintenance contractor in the dark blue coveralls. He wasn't working on the moorings. He was standing perfectly still beside the stairwell door, watching the waiting area through the glass partition. Watching me, specifically. I shifted seats, moved closer to a family with 2 kids. The contractor disappeared into the stairwell. 5 minutes later, he emerged on our level, pushing a cleaning cart that looked too new, too empty. The wheels squeaked against the salt-stained floor. He started mopping near the vending machines, but his movements were wrong. Too slow, too deliberate. The mop never touched the same spot twice. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text was just 3 words. Purple coat today? I was wearing my purple winter coat. The contractor had moved closer, now cleaning windows that didn't need cleaning. Through the reflection in the glass, I could see him watching me. When I turned, he was focused intently on his work. The family I'd sat near got up to check the departure board. I followed them, keeping close. Another text. Hospital badge visible. My badge was tucked inside my coat. Had been since I left home. The contractor abandoned his cart, walked to the information desk, spoke briefly with the attendant, who nodded and handed him something. A key card. Security access. He headed toward the restricted area door marked Staff Only. I needed to move. The main exit would take me back outside into -15 weather with nowhere to go. The next bus wasn't for an hour. The terminal had 2 levels connected by stairs and an elevator. Maybe I could loop around, stay in public view. The elevator was out of service. Handwritten sign taped across the doors. Fresh tape. I took the stairs down to the vehicle waiting area. Colder here. Concrete and metal instead of the carpeted passenger zone. A few drivers sat in their cars with engines running. Exhaust clouds mixing with the frozen air that leaked through the loading gates. The The contractor appeared at the far end, no longer pretending to clean, just walking. Steady pace. My key fob chirped. My car was in the long-term lot, a 10-minute walk through the snow. But there was a taxi lane, usually empty this time of day. One cab sat idling near the exit. I started toward it. The contractor cut through the vehicle lanes, closing distance. Not running, but not hiding his intention anymore. The taxi driver was absorbed in his phone, didn't look up as I approached. Another text. 3 years ago, remember? 3 years ago. Winter. I'd been working at a different hospital, testified in a malpractice case. A maintenance worker had been stealing medications, replacing them with saline. 2 patients died before we caught him. I'd found the discrepancies in the inventory system, provided the evidence that sent him to prison. His brother had worked maintenance too. Different hospital. Never charged with anything. The taxi driver finally looked up as I knocked on his window. Shook his head, aghast, pointed at his meter. Off duty. The contractor was 50 feet away. I could see his face clearly now. Older than in the newspaper photos from the trial, but unmistakable. Marcus Holden, the brother. I doubled back toward the pedestrian entrance, where 3 transport police officers usually stationed themselves. The booth was empty. Sign said they were doing platform rounds, back in 20 minutes. Holden followed, patient and unhurried. He knew the terminal layout, knew the blind spots. The CCTV cameras were positioned to watch the gates and ticket machines, not the maintenance corridors or service areas. He'd had time to plan this. The departures board updated, ferry now boarding. People started moving toward the gates. I joined the flow, trying to lose myself in the small crowd. Holden stayed parallel, using the maintenance walkway that ran alongside the passenger corridor. He'd emerge right at the boarding gate. I broke away from the crowd, headed for the terminal's prayer room. Multi-faith space. Always open, usually empty. The door was heavy, soundproofed. Inside, carpeted floor, benches, dim lighting. A second door at the far end. Emergency exit to the vehicle deck. Holden entered 30 seconds behind me, closed the door carefully. "You cost me everything," he said, voice steady, reasonable. "My brother died in prison, beaten to death by inmates who lost friends to fake medications." "He killed patients," I said. "You killed him. Your testimony." He pulled something from his coveralls, not a weapon, a syringe. "Same paralytic he used. You'll stop breathing in about 4 minutes. They'll think it's an allergic reaction, anaphylaxis from something you ate. By the time they check properly, I'll be 3 cities away." The emergency exit was locked. Of course it was. He had keys. Holden stepped closer. I grabbed the only thing in reach, a brass candlestick from the meditation altar. Swung hard at his hand. The syringe flew, skittered under the benches. We both dove for it. His weight advantage won. His hand closed around the syringe. The main door burst open. The family from earlier, the father looking for a quiet place to calm his crying toddler. They froze, taking in the scene. Holden on the floor, me backed against the wall. "He's attacking me," I said quickly. "Call security." Holden stood slowly, syringe palmed, invisible. Smiled at the family. "Misunderstanding. I'm maintenance. This lady fell, I was helping." He held up his terminal ID badge. The father looked between us, uncertain. His wife was already backing out with the children. "Check your phone," I told the father. "Emergency alert about an escaped patient from Riverside Psychiatric, 40 minutes ago." There was no alert. But Holden didn't know that. His composure cracked slightly. The father pulled out his phone, started checking. That moment of distraction was enough. I ran past them both, out into the main terminal, screaming for security. Holden didn't follow. By the time actual security arrived, he'd vanished through the service tunnels. They found the syringe, tested it. Potassium chloride, enough to stop a heart. They found his real name wasn't Marcus Holden, that was his brother. This was Samuel Holden, released 6 months ago after serving time for aggravated assault. They never found him. The terminal's CCTV system had been professionally looped to show empty corridors during the crucial 20 minutes. His contractor credentials were fake but sophisticated. Someone had helped him plan this. I don't take the ferry anymore, moved to the mainland, found a new job, one that doesn't require testimony or court appearances, but sometimes I get texts from unknown numbers, just times and locations, places I've been, places I'm going to be. Winter makes it worse. In the cold, everyone's bundled up, faces hidden. Every maintenance worker, every contractor, every man in dark coveralls could be him. The ice still catches the light the same way. Beautiful and terrifying.